And then you're going to expose the screen, which means you need an exposure unit. You make your own. Budget about 75 bucks. Everybody makes their own starting out. Don't buy one. And if some salesman tells you that you need this exposure unit and the exposure unit has multiple bulbs, go find yourself another salesman, because he doesn't understand exposure of screens. You must have only a single bulb. When you watch our video online about how to build your own exposure unit, there will be instructions how you can write to us, and we will send you free the instructions by email how to make your own exposure unit. So that's the exposure unit. Now you've got the screen, you've got the positive, and you're going to need some sort of a press. The cheap thing to do, starting out, 2 hinge clamps on a table, but you're going to have to build that table up such that you can slide a shirt underneath as well as over the top. Or you can acquire a machine. This happens to be a 1 color, but there are 2 color, 4 color, 6, 8, so forth. And it depends on what your work is. Generally speaking, most printing is 1 and 2 colors only. And most people starting out buy 4 and 6 colors. They're overbuying. They're spending too much money. And we'll tell you not to do that, but be in a program where if your business does expand, you can either expand the unit or trade it in. And of course, we do trade-ins, but you have to ask the supplier you're dealing with whether or not they'll take a trade-in. You're also going to need a squeegee. This is a typical squeegee. Happens to be 14 inches. Most designs are only 12 inches. That gives you an inch on either end, and it's a 70 durometer, medium durometer. So all you need is a squeegee, and you'll need some basic supplies. Some ink, you'll need a degreaser to prep your screen. Once the image has to be taken off, you need a stencil remover, and there's some other items. We can explain it. It'll be another video, but it's not that expensive. They're simple items. You don't buy a lot. The main decision you're going to make is how many colors, and do I get a machine or I start with something like hinge clamps, and then you're going to need a flash dryer minimally. So let's get a flash dryer and we'll take a look at that. This is a flash dryer. It happens to be a floor model, but you can also get table models. The floor model is actually better. It's slightly more expensive. And it's an infrared heater. You can buy these at 110 volt, which plugs into household current, or 230 volt, which is actually better. And if you have a clothes dryer, for example, that's 230. All houses have 230. It's just a question of whether or not you have a receptacle. If you get a flash dryer, and you're going to need one because the inks are called plastisol, they're plastic, they never dry, they only cure from heat. But you must have temperature control, and that's what this box is. Never buy one of these without temperature control. If the salesman is trying to sell you a flash dryer, ask if it has temperature control. If it doesn't, take a walk, because that salesman doesn't understand that different inks require different amounts of heat. It's like cooking in your kitchen. You have temperature control on the oven in your kitchen because sometimes you're cooking a turkey, which requires lower heat for a long time, and other times you want high heat for a very short time. And it's the same thing with curing ink. Sometimes you're on a very heavy material like a sweatshirt. Maybe the garment has moisture in it. In other cases, you're going to be printing a very thin synthetic, and they will cure very quickly. So you're going to have different printing and curing conditions. You want to be able to control the temperature. This is absolutely essential. Now, when you're getting temperature control, there are different types. There's a rheostat, which typically have relays in them, which means they'll shut down while you're curing. Then you get inconsistent curing. This one happens to be solid state. So when you turn the dial to a certain point, this dryer will put out a consistent heat. So you want to know if you're getting solid state or if you're getting one of these oven type heat controls. So, but you're going to need at least a flash dryer. Now, inks that you print on shirts, for example, typically require 6 to 8 seconds. When you touch the ink with your finger, if the ink does not come up on your finger, then you're all set. If it comes up, you need a little more time or maybe a little more heat. And that's it. And you should measure that and get that exact number of seconds. If you're swinging this heater over the shirt for a longer period of time, such that the ink is dry to the touch, it's no longer like putty, it's no longer soft, then it's perhaps fully cured. And if you then try to put a second color on top, the two will never bond. That's when ink flakes and comes off. So you want to make sure you have really good control on your temperature. So that's the flash dryer. Now let's go see what it's like to set up the press. This is a one-color press. When printing one-color garments, you should be printing 100 to 120 per hour. That's average. That's nothing real special. There are people who do more, but the average person prints that fast. Now, if you're full curing those inks with that flash unit, and a full cure does typically require about a minute, then you're only going to be able to full cure at best about 30 an hour. You can print 100 to 120, but you can only cure 30. The flash dryer is binding your production. That's why people buy conveyors, because the conveyors can keep up with production. However, starting out, your orders will probably be small, maybe 25, 50 pieces, and if it takes you a little bit longer, so what? You're not spending a lot of money, you're just getting into the business, and you can buy that conveyor later when you start getting 300-piece orders. 300 pieces, you don't want to be curing 30 an hour with a flash unit. That's 10 hours of curing. You want to be curing them as fast as you print them, and therefore 300 shirts, 3 hours of printing, you're all done printing and curing in 3 hours. Okay, when you set up, there are a couple things you're going to want to know. First of all, how do I get that image in the screen correctly? We have a video on that. It's called a Screen Registration Guide. It's a poor man's pin registration. You build it yourself in 10 minutes. It'll cost you nothing. It's free. Just watch the video. Okay, and what that does for you, gets the image in the screen exactly where you want it, straight, not crooked, not high, no any of those kind of problems. And that's particularly important if later you go to multicolor images, you're printing 2, 3, 4 images, you want those images to come together when you're printing. Okay, now the next thing is, say there's a line of type here. So how am I going to get that straight on the shirt? What you should do is measure across, find the center point, mark it, and do that 3 times, connect the line so you have a center line drawn down your platen, and then take a straight, you have a straight edge right down the center. So when you load the shirts, you're going to find the shirts typically have a crease in the center of them, and you're going to be sliding that shirt on, aiming the crease of the shirt for the center line. Okay? And you just pull the shirt all the way until you see the neck hit on the platen has a neck on it, and you're going to mark it depending on the size of the shirt. So I would print, say, all the smalls first, then I'd go to all the mediums, then the large, and the extra large. And I would have a mark for small, medium, and large, because as the shirts get bigger, I'm going to have to put the shirt on the platen a little bit differently. So I want to get the neck right so I don't end up with images too high or too low. I get them right where I want them. And I'm going to get them straight because I'm drawing the shirt right down that line. Okay, so that's how we get them on. Now when I go to print, and you can see I have a screen in here, squeegee, and I'm going to spread my fingers so that I have even pressure on the squeegee.